Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Let me introduce Ryan Smith. Ryan Smith's a hometown guy. He was born and raised in Provo, Utah. He attended Brigham Young University. He had stints at Ford Motors and HP. He is the co-founder. He co-founded Qualtrics with his dad in 2002, and he's a co-founder and CEO. Let's give a big Startup Grind welcome for Ryan Smith. Here we go. Well, welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. This is a home game for me.
Is it? Yeah. We're gonna lower the hoops. We're gonna get playing here in a minute.
I like it.
Well, we like to start these out with just getting to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us about where you grew up and kind of what your dad did.
So yeah, I was born in Eugene, Oregon, actually, and my father was a professor. He's a researcher. He's a scientist. And definitely a researching academic. Probably not as much as a teaching one. He's brilliant. And he moved out here, took a job at Brigham Young University, and this is where I grew up.
And you talk to us about, were you always an entrepreneur? Is it something, did you have businesses, in high school? Was it, was that kind of ingrained in you, or is that more of a learned thing?
Yeah, the word entrepreneur is a little different for me. I think it's a little overplayed. I feel like I've always been pretty opportunistic.
Yeah.
Just because growing up, it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to go start this company, or I want to be in tech or this or that. It was more, we always worked hard, and if there was an opportunity, we jumped on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we were known for around the neighborhood. Bunch of little Smith boys running around.
Jumping on opportunities.
Yeah.
So you attend BYU. What was your thought going into college? What was your, if you looked out, this is what I'm going to be doing 4 years from now, or 5 years from now when I get out. What were you thinking that was going to be?
It wasn't this.
Yeah.
For sure. I thought that I was really trying to find what I didn't like. I thought it was a little difficult to try to figure out what's going to make me happy. And so I was trying to cross things off my list pretty quickly. And I thought I was really looking at it from an opportunity standpoint. I really didn't care what the opportunity was. I was more focused on some theories that, would allow me to grow, allow me to be creative, allow me not to have a ceiling. And, there's quite a few opportunities that can fit that.
Yeah. Let's talk about opportunities for a minute. So, as an entrepreneur, there are so many opportunities, right? So you have all these ideas as a creative person. I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. How do you know where to focus your time? How do you know which idea, which opportunity to go after?
Currently or back then?
I'm just saying, just in general, there's a lot of founders here. How should they look at opportunities, do you think?
Yeah, I think what you decide not to do is probably equally as important as what you decide to do. I think we're smart business people. I think we're pretty good entrepreneurs. But I know a lot of people that are smart and good and bet on the wrong vehicles. So I think if you look at the vehicle you're betting on, I have a friend who, if no matter how big this vehicle that he's betting on goes, it's a $60 million probably market cap. Whereas you're looking at, and that's how I look at opportunity now. Back then, I didn't know that, we were basically going to be taking over, disrupting a $20 billion industry.
Yeah.
But that's where it's kind of grown. I think the key point is where you start. It's never really where you end up. If you look at a lot of the successful companies that are out there, especially around here, a lot of them didn't start where this glamorous exit was. So I think the key is innovating along the way, because you kind of just need to get out into the water, because nothing happens in the dock, right?
Well,
you gotta wax the boat.
There's parties usually at the dock.
Yeah.
I was just kidding. It's not.
Well, there are.
Tough crowd tonight.
Yeah. Well,
never say that again. So you're one thing that makes you quite unique is you got a business degree. You're running a large software company. Yeah. Is that something? But you've got a family of engineers, right? So you've got some engineering background. But is that something? Looking back, was that a good decision? Do you feel like if you would go back, has that served you well? Would you?
A business degree?
Yeah.
I would have done it totally different. I would have gone into what I sucked at, not what I thought was my strength. And I think that I should have looked at it that way.
Is that dancing or what? What are that?
No, I actually have pretty amazing moves. It's more around, there's a lot of areas. You can always be more technical. You can always be more quantitative.
Yeah.
And I grew up, with a mentor who was basically a researcher, and marketing was always around, and it's the area that I loved, but I felt like I didn't have to try when I was there, and I would have loved a little bit more experience in that way. But at the end of the day, a couple classes here and there aren't going to change your destiny.
So tell us about, so you spent briefly you were in college, you spent a little bit of time at Ford. Tell us about what you did at Ford and what you learned about yourself.
Got to be really careful. These are all clients. Look, I wouldn't have traded those experiences for the world. I think I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about what I didn't want to do. Not particularly just about the companies, but more the jobs. And, it's interesting because at the time I was working on Qualtrics. When we were in college, I was sitting in class working on Qualtrics, but it wasn't like I had a business plan and I was saying, hey, we're going to go build this tech company. I didn't know whether it was going to go.
Yeah.
It wasn't sexy back then. And I had this hope that I could go do this when I graduated full time. I was at Ford and on my lunch break, closed my biggest deal, and that's what propelled me. If anything, those opportunities gave me more confidence that I could do this. And it's interesting because, it just seemed like too good of a gig to be able to jump in, too unfair, but it was built kind of one block at a time. I think it would have been totally different if from the very beginning I would have had to go all in.
Yeah.
Because there's that period where you need to find out who you are. And if you figure that out right away, you got to ask yourself the question, someone else could probably figure this out pretty quickly too.
Right. And I'd like to know how long that period you think it was before you figured it out. But talk to us about the very beginning. How did Qualtrics start?
Yep.
Where was it? Tell us about, your dad and those things.
So my dad's he's a scientist. He's a researcher. He's always been messing around with technology. Super early adopter. Always doing it for his own research and his own purpose to better the world of, research. And he would sometimes turn them loose to his MBA students and other people, but fundamentally never really wanted to take it off in a big way. And I was actually at HP one summer and was doing an internship.
In the Bay Area, in Palo Alto?
No, I was in California.
Okay.
And it was by the beach. And so I was like, hey, I'll go do this. And actually, he
was that the main kind of criteria for making the decision?
Absolutely. I had a convertible Jeep. It was just like,
okay.
All right, let's roll. That's a funny story on how that gig happened. I was 21 years old, and I basically emailed everyone on the BYU alumni list and said, if they were in New York, I said, I'm going to be in New York, and I need a summer internship. And if they were in LA, I'd say, I'm going to be in LA this summer, I need an internship.
Huh.
And then one guy emailed me back at HP, and he's like, hey, I've got a gig.
Wow.
And so I just packed up and went down there. He had no idea that I wasn't living there. I didn't have a place to stay.
That's awesome.
But I was trying to make it easy for him, and it ended up being unbelievable.
Huh.
I think that my internship salary was more than most of the starting offers that I got coming out of college. And so by the time I was really 22, I had already had pretty much 2 internships, and I kind of knew what I didn't like. And I feel like a lot of my friends didn't figure that out till they were 26 or 27. And
yeah,
some of them are buddies. 4 or 5 gigs, Right. So you figure it out where you want to be. But back to the question and my dad's theory, he called me when I was out in California, and he had cancer, and it wasn't looking too promising.
When was this? 01?
Cancer.
2002?
Like 01, 2002, and I ended my internship and came home, and I wanted to be with him, and it's kind of a funky, going through chemo is kind of a lonely process. He took time away from school, and I actually took the semester off and just said, look, there's not a whole lot that's more important than me spending time with my dad. But he was messing around with this technology, and I had just gotten back from HP, and I felt like I had a pretty I was ready to conquer the world, and I said, let's work on this. And so every day when he'd go to his chemo, he'd come back and we'd work on Qualtrics. And by the time he could talk and recover, pretty much signed up 20 customers.
Wow.
And it was a world that I really didn't know a whole lot about. And, he didn't have any money to pay me. Professors aren't, it's getting better and better, but they're not exactly loaded, especially around here.
Right.
So we just formed a partnership, and it kind of took off from there. And, we didn't know where it was going to go. And we signed up one customer at a time. And now we're over 5,000 enterprises. So
do you remember who the first customer was?
Absolutely.
Who was it?
We targeted academic to start. I thought I could look on a website, I could find a professor, and I had a built-in case study sitting next to me. So I'm like, this guy's got to have more friends that want what he has. And it was a professor at the Kellogg School of Business, and I signed her up, and then she told a friend.
Free account, or was it a paid account, or what was it?
Actually, she paid, which is kind of crazy.
What was she thinking?
Yeah, I don't know. Early adopter. It was funny because I was at an event in Chicago last month, and she got up and spoke 10 years later and 1,300 universities later about how she was the first one.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's pretty cool because actually all the clients that I signed up, the first 10 are still clients today.
Wow, that is.
And then on the corporate side, it was a conference board. They do the National Consumer Confidence Study, and I'm here knowing nothing or very little about what we're talking about. My dad's kind of the cookbook with all the research knowledge, and I've got 7 PhDs on a phone. He can't talk, so he's writing it, and he got lost after about 2 seconds, and we ended up closing the deal.
And so at this point, the product is built, or an early stage version of the product is built?
Yep.
Okay. And who built it? Was it your dad? And
we hired engineers. And, we're both technical enough to be able to go through that process. Obviously, people can do it better at the time than we were, but we knew exactly what we wanted. And we knew, his was always very sophisticated, and I wanted it easy. And somewhere in the middle is, this perfect app that we've got.
And these are guys, were they with you physically? Did you, were you in the basement at this point, or were these?
Yeah. We were in a basement. We were contracting. A lot of students.
Yeah.
Had a bunch of different nightmare scenarios where I thought it was all over every 3 months. So it's...
Oh, because they're leaving, or what?
Because they're leaving, because I can't find them. I can't get a hold of them. I can't get the source code. I didn't set it up right. The servers are down. The power's down in our...
Start the Wilk.
Yeah, you don't know where it is. Yeah. It's tough, man.
And so at what point did it start to become kind of, you say, wow, this is like a company, or this is more than just me and my dad, tinkering on this project?
Yeah, when we started bringing other people in.
Yeah, which would have been when?
In the basement. 2002.
Okay.
2003. I convinced a buddy to turn down a $60,000 job and work for $8,000 his first year. I think he made 12 his second. And
overperformed, or?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I had to give him a bonus.
Sure.
But he's one of my 50%. Business partners.
That's a pretty good rate.
I'd take it. But we started bringing in people. We ended up with so many cars in the basement that the neighbors were complaining. I think we had 20 people down there. They couldn't pick up the garbage cans on garbage day because a guy couldn't turn around with all the cars. So we'd have people spread out. A couple times customers called up. This is when you could start getting online and seeing things, saying, "I'm out in front of this white house." Oh, you must be lost. I don't. No one knew we were in a basement.
Wow. This is your parents' home. Mom's upstairs. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so you were there 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, and you're adding, or you kind of maintaining?
Adding, just trying to nail it. I think we were making $100,000 a month out of our basement.
Wow. You raised the $8,000 guy at that point, right? A little bit after.
He could eat what he killed.
Okay, so you're at 2004. You're how many people?
We were probably 20.
20 people in the basement.
In the basement.
Wow. And then what? What's next? 2005?
My dad actually decided he was going to take a Fulbright and head to Moldova. So he became a Fulbright scholar, went and worked with the government and business schools over there, and basically I said,
left you guys.
I said, I need the keys of the kingdom.
Wow.
And that's when it took off.
Huh.
He had to take the invoices out of his shoebox. I had all the bank accounts, and he came back to us in an office and about 45 people.
I mean, this is one of the things that's so interesting about you guys is that it's like, okay, we see Qualtrics today, and you know, and I remember in 2004, 2005, I remember like, what's Ryan doing? It's like he's working on some survey thing. It's like, what is it? Like, what? In his basement. I was like, what is he doing? You know, and he's playing a lot of golf.
All of our friends
you know?
said this.
Well, yeah. I mean, Ryan's the guy, you know, we all have this friend, right, who like, he just like, what was I thinking? You know, but Ryan, you know, it wasn't this overnight success, right? I mean, you guys, you grinded it out, you toiled it out for years and years and years without anyone caring. And what? You just did it, I guess, right? And what was the motivation for you guys?
You're like referring to an event that means we arrived, right?
Well, you're on the Start Brand stage. I just assumed.
All right. All right. That's what it triggered it. All right. Look, yeah, it's not sexy. It's a 10-year overnight success, right? It's amazing. Qualtrics just blew up.
Right. That's right.
How does that happen? You know. But if you actually look around at all the success stories that we've had in Utah, 10 years, 12 years, you know, you look at Vivint, you look at Omniture, it's the same playbook. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
You know, I'd actually be probably, you know, if it can happen a lot quicker than that, which now technology's moving at a faster pace a little bit. But it takes a long time to do something great. And a lot of times the recognition comes very quickly. You know, we flew under the radar because that was the playbook that we ran. And what's wrong with making money quietly? Actually, there's a lot of upside to it.
Yeah. Well, what do you remember the first VC that ever called you, that ever contacted you? When did that start happening? When did people start
2008.
Oh, that
2007, 2008.
Okay, so let's go back then to 2005, 2006. You're still in the basement. When do you move out of the basement?
2006.
2006. You're how many?
Probably, we stayed relatively about the same size for a while. 20, 25.
And how many of those were engineers? How many were sales?
We probably had, you know, between, you know, 6 to 10 engineers in those early years.
And so, at what point did he come back in?
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
So I was really struggling on the technical side because we had signed up so many customers that scalability was becoming an issue, the way the code was becoming an issue. I thought I was really cool in the way I could manage engineers. But I thought that we were going to have to raise some capital to get some help in there. Yeah. Not from a capital side, but from expertise. And I sat there and I said, who is the best person I know? Or I actually ran the playbook. What are these people going to do? Are they going to hire, am I going to get a Harvard MBA here and there that's going to come in? Or what is it?
Yeah.
And I ran the playbook, and then I thought, no one they're going to get is better than my brother Jared. So I called him about 2005, and he's at Google at the time. And I'm like, bro, you got to come back to Utah. And that wasn't really a popular conversation. But it was the hardest sell I've ever made.
And Google's the hottest company in the world.
Google's the hottest company in the world. He's a product genius, and he hasn't been in Utah in 10 years.
Wow.
Loving his house out in Palo Alto, traveling the world, and he's in his niche. And I sold him every day. And finally I got him to agree to make the jump back.
You were saying too, you had said that the people that he was working with at the time are now have gone on to start just some of the companies that we use and we know, right? Yeah, some of the biggest companies in the Valley.
Know, the alumni network there, and those people, you know, they hired a lot of smart people and they did a lot of good things. And, you know, you cross paths with some of those people today, whether they were MBA interns or, you know, just people they reported to have all gone on, and a lot of them still there at Google are doing great things.
Would you look at him as the hardest engineering hire that you ever had?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And bringing him in, what happened then? So you bring in this just absolute product rock star. What then happens at Qualtrics from the product engineering side?
Probably about 7x productivity.
From the same guys?
Same guys.
Wow.
I thought it was good.
And I mean, had you felt like when he came in, had you hired a good team? Did he revamp the whole team? Did he use what he had? What happened?
I just think it's understanding. I mean, some people just have it and some people don't.
Yeah.
And being able to think at a global level, being able to, I think when it comes to engineering, at least for us, is, it seems like I'd touch stuff and it just wouldn't have that long of a shelf life, or I'd have to redo it because everything wasn't thought through. And if you can actually nail things the first time and send them out into orbit for a long time, you can move very, very fast as a company. It's when you're not thinking through everything, or you don't quite have the vision that, hey, we're going to be global, and how's this going to impact this part of the world, when you're actually stacking it all together.
So you start in 2002. At what point do you say, like, this actually could become something? I mean, at what point does your head go from, this could be a big opportunity, this could be $1 billion opportunity, this could be a hundreds and hundreds of $1 million opportunity? When did that shift happen, or was it always there?
So historically, up until about 2007, 2008, we were primarily focused on the academic market, and that's why it wasn't really popular to a lot of people who seen it. It was a huge bet. It was, we're going to go and penetrate the academic world, and with the hope that we can get some viral growth out of it, because I didn't have any money for marketing. And it's exactly what happened 8 years later.
Yeah.
So 2007, 2008, huge downturn in the economy. Very curious what was going to happen to our business, and it absolutely took off. Companies that we'd call up and we'd talk to them about, gathering insights and making decisions from customers or new products, who historically had said, we don't want anything to do with that, we know everything, had a couple failures, and wanted to ask some questions. And so that's when our company totally took off.
Well, and on that focus, I mean, I've read that you really focused on getting those first 250 universities, right? Tell us a little bit about that. First of all, why was that? Just because that was in your DNA with your dad and all these other things? Why did you focus on it, and how did you maintain that focus?
You brought up earlier what entrepreneurs might struggle with and what opportunities to go after. It is a lonely world, and everyone you talk to is telling you to go a different way. Your competitors are going a different way. Your market's going a different way. I'm sitting in the basement. People are raising $30 million, branding every magazine, and I'm sitting there going, how do I compete? And, execution's an amazing barrier to entry. And hard work is too. And I remember talking with my brother, and it's like, you're all over the place, Ryan. You're thrashing everywhere. So he would just say, don't talk to me about anything but 250 schools. So I'd call up and I'd be like, hey, guess what? He's like, 250. And I can't tell you, there was probably 50 conversations where it was 250, 250, 250. And I firmly believe, I was the one that came up with the number, that if we got to that, everything else would take care of itself. I play golf. It's kind of like everyone wants to go revamp their whole golf swing, but it's amazing if they just keep their head still. A lot of things are taken care of.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's that simple. And I think it was, and really what happened was, once we did get there, everything else did take care of itself.
So what happened? So you finally get to 250 universities, and then what? Why did that have such an impact on the business?
Because there was enough usage going on where the virality of our product had legs of its own. And you ask about the growth and where it came from. We didn't have a marketing team. My first press interview was with Forbes earlier this year.
Yeah.
My first press release was earlier this year. 10 years. Seems kind of backwards, right?
Yeah, that's kind of odd.
Yeah, people don't do that anymore. It's kind of the opposite.
Well, so is that a product of, that desire, that culture to kind of not go press forward, but go product forward, go customer forward? Where does that come from? Does that come from your dad? Does that come from just, where does that come from?
All of us. I mean, I think we've learned that there's a couple of things that really matter, and there's a lot of noise. And, everyone's telling us that this was a playbook you had to run, and I don't think we did anything that way or what was the right way. And, I'm a big proponent that there's not a right or wrong playbook. And I can prove someone wrong every step of every argument. There's some great best practices, but, you got to go with your gut.
Yeah. When you guys, and this is another thing that's very popular in Utah, right? It's the Inc. 500. It's all over billboards. It's all over. You guys never even submitted, right? I mean, you never participated in any of this.
I turned it down this year for the 6th year in a row.
You turned it. They contacted you and said, "Hey,
someone's contacted.
Will you be a part of it?" Yeah.
Why?
Does she have a good billboard? I don't know.
Move the needle. I mean,
yeah.
Sorry, but I know a lot of companies that have done that, and I've got an argument that it's just who you are, and that's just not who we are. I mean, we're about a company. It's all of us. I think there's great things that we have done, and that doesn't mean we're not going to change either. Because if we decide as a company that that's what we want to do, I think it's appropriate that we should be able to shift and turn on a dime and go that direction.
Yeah.
But it's the same with raising capital. Forever it was no. There's no need for it. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, Ryan, are you hypocritical because all of a sudden you just took a huge round? It's what felt right. It's what our gut said, and we're absolutely.
It was the best next step for Qualtrics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you've got to be looking at that over time and time over again, because where you start's not where you're going to end up. And if it's supposed to be that way, it's you're going to have a tough time, because innovation does have a short shelf life.
I mean, it's even more interesting that this is all happening in Utah, because the big successes in Utah, it's like the bigger it gets, the more flamboyant and outrageous the promotion and the founders get. That happens everywhere. It's not just Utah, but it's particularly in Utah. And I don't mean to embarrass you, but from college to today, which is, I hadn't really seen you very much the last 7 or 8 years, but I was really surprised when I saw you 6 months ago. I feel like you're more humble than you were in college. Where all these things have happened. I'm not saying you were probably humble in college.
Tell that to my wife.
But I'm just, all these things have happened to you guys. And, to me, the guys I respect most in the Valley are guys like Naval Ravikant, or guys like Steve Blank. These guys who are they're not flashy, they just deliver. And I think I wonder, why, is that just, have you made a conscious effort to say, hey, this isn't going to affect us, or is it affecting you guys? What do you think?
Well, first of all, that's very kind, but not a lot of people call me humble. I think this is probably the second time in my life.
That wasn't very
if you go back if you go back to what is it that affects us? I mean, you're referring to, well, it's not affecting you. What are you referring to? Cash?
Yeah, cash, success.
So, first of all, on the money side, I've realized very, very quickly that it's not about money. If it was about money, I would have taken a totally different road and probably wouldn't be here right now. And the sooner you realize who you are and a little bit about yourself, the easier life becomes. Where your blind spots are. And it hurts for a little bit, but I firmly believe that it's about what you're gaining and what you're learning, and about what you're part of. And that helps the perspective of, it's not completely about the money or the success. The other thing is it's a team effort. I know that sounds super cliche, but there's a lot of us that should carry that pride. And I know that I want to be doing this for a long time. And so kind of going through the exercise of, well, what if you weren't doing this? What would you be doing? I want to be doing Qualtrics is really helpful. And fortunately enough, I'm in a position where I can choose to do that.
Yeah. And
so, and it's a big task. I mean, we're 300 employees. That's humbling alone as it is, right? We're in the tech world. We're competing, and ego can only get you that far. I mean, I've had a pretty impressive growth experience or opportunity this last 6 months in scaling and shifting gears as an organization, and it's humbling. And actually, if it wasn't humbling, then it was the wrong thing to do.
When you say it's not about the money, and this is what a lot of people say and believe. But is it never about the money? I mean, does it become not about the money at the point where you don't have to worry about money? Do you feel like at its very purest form when you started Qualtrics with your dad that it was, it was not about providing, taking care, like hitting the basic needs, and then is beyond that, or did you feel was it always like, hey, this is the product, this is just what we should do, this is the right thing to do?
Well, no, I mean, money's great, right? It can solve a lot of problems.
I've heard. I don't know, but I've heard.
Yeah, you do. But it can't only be about that. It can't.
Why?
Because it comes and goes. I know so many people who've had a ton of money and don't have anything. I mean, you can't. And I know people really close to me that it's happened to, and it's about what you're getting out of it. And, it's just a box to check. Because, if someone's got the same amount of money you could be driving the same car as Kim Kardashian, right? What's the difference?
I'm awesome.
Yeah. No. But seriously, I mean, the money situation, I mean, those are equivalent. It's not, I mean, maybe the size of your airplane. I mean, that's pretty much the difference. But
right. Once
you get to a point, you've got to start asking yourself, what's it about? And the sooner you can figure that out, I think it's a good exercise for everyone to go through is, what happens when you get there?
Yeah.
Because if you're not ready for it, and we all know a lot of people who haven't been, and I'm not saying that I am, but if you're not ready for it, it's going to be tough to kind of navigate into the next gear of life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good insight. Let's go back to Qualtrics. 2008, you start getting calls from venture capitalists, right? And what is the response from you guys?
I either wouldn't respond or my line would be, sorry, not interested, thanks. And probably not a whole lot more than that.
And the thought is just, hey, we will just continue to build this. This will grow as it's supposed to grow. We don't need outside capital.
Yeah, no need for money. We're profitable. We're having fun. This is the dream.
Yeah. And so 2009, how many employees are you at that point?
2009, we're probably 50 to 80.
50 to 80.
I mean,
2010?
2010, 100.
Okay. Still, and now the calls are coming in.
Calls are 3 a day.
3 a.m., did you say?
3 a day.
3 a day, okay. And so at what point do you start to kind of shift and say, hey, this is, like you say, like we're focused, we're doing this, and then, you know what, the future of Qualtrics needs to change. When does that start to happen?
So that process is a little, it can be consuming, and I try to do a pretty good job of tuning out the noise and really focusing on moving the needle of the organization. And it's tough to do both. So fortunately, I have a pretty good advisor and a friend who I was playing golf with, and he said, hey, instead of turning these people away, why don't you send them to me, and I'll just keep them lukewarm, Ryan, because you never know what you don't know. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, trust me, you never know what you don't know, and this has been a great mentor to me. And so I did. So when they come to me, I just say, hey, talk to this person. And that was really good, but he politely said no. But said, hey, let's stay in contact, because there might be a time where whatever life experience or life event comes along, or growth event from a company that, you might want to have those relationships warm.
Yeah. And so, okay, so you're cultivating those relationships. 2011, late 2011?
Yeah, early 2011.
Okay. Tell us what happened.
We were talking one day, and he's like, we should go to Sandhill. You got to go have this experience. It's pretty fun. I know you like Pebble Beach, but this is a cool one. So we actually picked a few, and we said, hey, let's just go hear what they have to say, and let's go interview these guys.
Yeah. And so Excel's down in
Yeah,
University,
at this point,
right?
we hadn't really met
those
with Excel.
guys yet?
Excel had reached out, I think, for 3 years
Wow.
before we did a deal. But, we had probably 8 or 10 that we told that if we were to meet with them, we would give them a chance to meet with us.
And so what finally tipped the scales for you? You've told some of these stories about meeting with Michael Moritz and him talking to you about. Tell us, for most of us who will never go through that process or haven't gone through that process, what are some of the things you have learned from dealing with Sandhill Road VCs?
Look, we were pretty adamant that it really had to make sense for us to do that. Being a profitable company, it had to be about more than money, right? There's a lot of people right now that can write a check. And we went through the process. I think there were 7 groups that we met with. We narrowed it down to kind of 3. And then we were going to circle the wagons and decide, do we want to do this? And, we had a good year in 2011. And we had a good year this year, too. But we decided that, let's be a little more transparent with our business and let's get serious about this. And we had a chance to work with Sequoia and Excel together. And our main objective was 1 and 1 has to equal 5. And if 1 and 1 doesn't equal 5, this deal doesn't work. It has to be so compelling to help us grow and achieve our objectives that we're all in. And that's exactly what happened. We got Sequoia and Excel, and we feel the same way 6 months later.
Yeah. And so tell us what's changed in the last 6 months since that's happened. So like you said, you had your first press ever, and you had kind of the Sequoia partner had this great quote of, this is the best software company you've never heard of, and a gem in Utah, and all these different things. What has that done? How has it changed? How has it impacted you for good or bad?
So one of the reasons why we did decide to go out and bring in outside partners is when you're a founder-run business and you don't have outside partners, growth is tough. It's tough to put $1 million purchase on your credit card. Even if it's the right thing to do and it's the right thing to do, you're sitting there going, I don't have to do this.
Yeah.
It's a lonely world.
Yeah.
And everything can be high into the right saying there is no way you're going to get a 10x return on this, but still it's tough. And separating that a little bit to saying, hey, we've got an opportunity to do something great. Billion-dollar opportunities are rare.
Yeah.
Let's go get it. And I think once everyone sat around and said we're in, then we did. And what's changed is we're all in. We're running fast. Our team's now close to 300 employees. We're building out our executive team. We're opening up Europe. We've gone from a single product company to multiple products. We're continuing to innovate. And, we're just going at the speed that we want to be going at.
You hired any bald guys, or do you need any bald guys?
We're in Utah. Come on.
So the Qualtrics for the next. Do you look at Qualtrics as the last company you ever start? I mean, in your mind, do you say, yeah, I hope I retire at Qualtrics, and not like retire in 5 years, but like, I hope I'm at Qualtrics for 20 years, or do you say, what is your thought process?
Derek, that's a tricky question. The way I think about it, it's, if you would have told me last year that I have 2 new partners and we would have raised $70 million from Sequoia and Excel, I probably wouldn't say, get out of here. I think we're open. I know how rare the opportunity is. I know how much has had to line up. I am very, very aware, as good as I think I am, and as good as our team is, what's had to line up to be in the position we are with the technology we have, with the customer base we have. 10 years, 11 years, that's a long time where you've got to run that with the market and the demand and, data being at the forefront of everything right now. It wasn't in 2002. I couldn't even sell this stuff. So, the same way it'd be tough for you to predict the next Facebook 10 years from now. That's a long time in technology world. But this vehicle, which I talked about earlier, choosing the right vehicle, there is nothing this vehicle can't do if we want to go there. The vehicle's not going to hold us back. The market cap, what we're trying to do is very big. And we're having success with it. And that's encouraging. That's why I wake up and want to come into work. I'm working harder now than I've ever worked.
Did you golf this week?
I haven't played golf. It's an afterthought right now. I need to. My wife wants me to get out and play golf because it's
therapeutic.
It's my yoga. Yeah. My latte.
Do you wear the stretchy pants when you play like yoga? Let's talk about one more thing, and then we'll take some questions if you guys want to go to the mics. Let's talk about radical transparency. What is radical transparency, Ryan?
What is radical transparency?
Who knows? Has anyone heard of this, radical transparency? Okay, good. Well, we're all going to learn something. But tell us, what is radical transparency?
Well, to me, it's probably not a lot. To other people, it means much more. We're a very transparent organization, extremely transparent. We believe that we're hiring individuals who are smart, we're hiring them to think, and we can't control how they think. This isn't 1980s where here's your task, this is all you're doing. We bring people in, we give them a computer, and we hope we're training them well. And then they're on their own. So what we're trying to do as an organization is we've taken some of our best engineers and built out our internal tools to make it so the environment is transparent and giving everyone the information that they need to be successful at their job. And it's been a process that's been evolving over time, but all we can control is the environment around us.
Yeah.
Especially if you're on we hired 149 people last year.
Wow.
And everything's transparent, from everyone's goals to their paid time off to what everyone's doing this week. And, two things happen in an organization that I believe cause organizations not to execute. One is they get focus internally, which is something actually we can control at some level by trying to be transparent about what individuals would get focused on and predict, well, actually, this is pretty predictable why people would all huddle around and wonder about that. But if it's actually out in the open, then it's very tough for people to speculate. And actually, the employees, and everyone has the information to actually do the job. If everyone knows what engineering's doing, no one's going to be like, well, that product didn't ship, our engineers are worthless.
Right.
Well, they can look and see, well, actually, we just set up 3 new data centers that no one saw, and actually, our engineers are rock stars. And that transparency of, as an organization, and the communication helps us grow. 149 people, so at any time, we might have 20% of our org that's new in the last 90 days. How do you get individuals up to speed in 3 weeks instead of 9 months so they're contributing? How do you get everyone paddling together? Because I can't run it all.
Right.
And so we have to enable people. We have to trust our employees. And and it's not for everyone,
Well, tell us about how your healthcare program worked. How did you guys do that? It's a pretty unique way of doing it.
Yeah, in isolation, transparency and everything we're doing in isolation might not seem like that creative or that impactful. But in aggregate, it's pretty cool. Healthcare, for example, people are coming to me saying, we don't like the healthcare. Well, why? And it was just a gazillion different reasons. So, well, why don't you guys get a group? Who wants to be on the healthcare group? Have vendors come in and select a plan. And the rest of the org, this is your group. If you don't like it, these are your colleagues, and I'll join whatever plan we decide. And that's where that is. And we do a lot of decision making that way. And
well, you do that with your bonus structure, right? It's like
there's teams where there's a bonus pool, and rather than everyone wondering what everyone's bonus is, why don't you let them vote?
Yeah.
And actually we haven't had any issues with it. And actually people a lot of times have been absolutely bought in on why someone would get that. And then they can start mirroring the actions of that employee and what they're doing, rather than having maybe the popular employee who's not the most competent, but popular, get all the praise. We want the competent, not the confident, to receive or to be the mirrored employees within our company. Because if you actually, and we've broken this down, there's these silent individuals within our company that are ninjas holding it all together. And a lot of times they're not recognized.
Yeah, because their heads down, cranky.
And that's what they do.
Right.
And they're freaks. And they're unbelievable. And Qualtrics is a place for that type of an employee.
Let's give Ryan a big round of applause. Can we do that?
All right, Ryan. My question is specifically with your relationship with your wife. Can you talk about her role in supporting you and with starting things up? And
how did your wife respond?
Your question is in relationship with my wife.
What is your relationship with your wife, Ryan? No, that's not what he asked.
Scale of 1 to 10. This is where I get in trouble. No. What her role has been in.
How she supported you.
Yeah,
how's your wife?
I'll just tell you.
How is your wife supporting you?
How is my wife supporting me? She's the sugar mama. I'll just tell you straight up, and this isn't just a line because my wife might see something. If I didn't have a supportive wife and able to sacrifice, because this is a sacrifice a lot of times, there is no possible way we would be where we were at. And if my partner's families didn't see the vision of what we're doing, it's late nights, it's early mornings, it's sacrifice with kids. But it's work hard, play hard, right? And I feel like, my wife, it's hard. It's hard to turn Qualtrics off when I get home at night. But that's part of the progression that I have to learn. This is something that's worth a lot more than money, because whether it's Qualtrics or something else in life, you can't say, oh, well, I'm not going to do this hard thing because it's going to get me off balance. Being balanced is crap, because we're never balanced. One part, if we're an airplane, one wing is always on the ground, and you need a good wife or a good spouse or someone in your life to tell you, hey, get that back up. Then the other one will go down. Whether it's children, whether it's family, whether it's school, whether it's work, everyone thinks you're going to be at this balance. It never works that way. Because then life's a roller coaster and you're trying to be balanced. It just doesn't work. That's not reality. So my wife's a gamer. She's on board. And I think that that's super helpful. And we wouldn't be here without it.
Thanks.
Hopefully that answered your question. I'm not passionate about that, though.
Yeah, go ahead. Please speak into the mic, too.
All right. So at what point in your growth process did you go from being the guy who's in charge of sales and revenue generation and turn that over to somebody? And then what did that process look like?
That's probably the interesting question. Most interesting question of the night. So the question was, at what point of the process was I the guy who ran sales and marketing and then turned that over? That's my background. That's my passion. It's what I like to do. I always like to be in front of customers. And I'm still heavily involved in that aspect. But it's been something that we built along the way. So it hasn't been all of a sudden I'm just pulling out. It's actually a gradual, it's been a gradual role shift. And I've had to shift gears. And actually, this is where transparency's really helped, allowed other people to take on as much responsibility as they wanted or could handle at the time. And fortunately enough, we've done a really, really good job hiring, those folks to be able to do that. But the more clients you sign up, obviously, the more demand there is. So it's not like you're just going to, shift and go do something else. I was on the phone with a customer this morning, and I hope I never get to the point where I can't do that, because that's my MO. That's what I love. I love going to Chicago or Miami and having 60 customers in a room and being able to talk to them, talk about what their needs are, because that's where a lot of the innovation comes from. Because at the end of the day, if it's not what they want, sometimes, we can be innovative, but at the same time, they've got pains, they've got needs, they're already on our product, they know us, and you'll get gold nuggets out of your customers. And it's your job to execute them. You've got to be close to it. Don't let someone else, get between that.
I was in your office a few months ago. You were closing a deal. I mean, and I was shocked. This huge company, you're still. It's great. It's great. Go ahead.
So, congrats on your round of funding this last year. My question is actually.
Wish me luck, man. Congrats. Wish me luck.
Good luck.
Come on, we're gonna go conquer the world.
So, your experience, it sounds it's a little different from maybe other startups where you were turning away VCs for a number of years, and then finally, the need came around. Whereas other startups that may need to go and find funding to get things going or whatever. If this were some alternate universe where Ryan Smith 10 years ago had to go that route, finding funding first, what advice would you give yourself in that 10-year ago alternate universe to helping you go out and raise the funding, how to interact with VCs, to make yourself appealing, etc.?
Well, that's a good question. Do you want me to repeat that? No?
I think we got it.
All right. First of all, it was the alternate universe 10 years ago. I was doing everything the wrong way. I decided not to do it because that's what everyone else was doing. That was the playbook. If I had to go out, I guess, let me back up. The reason why I didn't, building a business to keep and a business to sell, there's a lot of decision-making that could be different. I hope everyone can see that, short-term versus long. And we always built our business as if we were going to have to keep it. And we still do that. Heaven forbid we're stuck with Qualtrics. Right?
Bummer.
Yeah. I mean, and hopefully, I mean, it's a good lesson that that's what we're focused on. If I were to go back, what advice would I have? That's a really tough question. I think I would I'd go back to the 1 and 1 equals 5. I also think that if you think that your investors or the people that are coming in, I mean, ultimately it's going to be up to you to take it there. And so I would really focus on trusting your gut and going and then leveraging with the questions you have. But I also would be very, very patient. I feel like way too many people starting companies are too impatient. They want it and they want it now. And I see that as a huge red flag a lot of times, because I wouldn't trade those days where I had to grind in the basement for anything. Because I found gears that I didn't know I had. We were falling off the cliff every month. And, go try competing in a world with no funding. The creativity has to come. Go try going to a trade show with no money. And you've got these $50,000 booths next to you. And you're just this little Charlie Brown trade show table. And you go to the convenience store and buy vitamin water and look at it and say, you need energy, and trying to start a conversation. I mean, that's what we had to do. And it was weird because the people handing out iPads next door, whatever it was back then, they were just sitting there waiting for people to come. So hustling is not a bad thing. So I just be patient. I hope I answered your question. And honestly, I haven't been through that, so I don't know how valid my advice is.
Eric from Adobe. Thanks again, Eric, for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
You bet.
It's great. It's a great edifice.
We like it. You talked about your culture being very open and transparent and collaborative. And how do you balance that with the need for speed? to make a decision and act now?
That's a great question. I don't think there's another option. I think that's something that individuals have to learn how to develop. But the opposite of open and collaborative, where one person's making all the decision and everyone's bought in, is not the answer for us. I think we can go faster with everyone pedaling and everyone understanding what their mission is and being able to have buy-in and work on the ability to execute and make decisions quickly and empowering people to make it. And the answer is, you got to let people mess up. No one's perfect. Even when we try to be the most cautious, we mess up anyway, so we're going to mess up. But just don't do it twice. Don't do it again. And I think that's how we do it. We're going to have to take some risks. And I've messed up a lot. So I don't know if that answers your...
That's heartening. Thank you.
All right.
Let's do one more and then we'll end.
During this experience coming up, 10 years, and the success you've had, when you ran into problems, how much did you turn to your gut to make decisions as opposed to turn to like a book or a mentor or some other source to say, hey, how do I solve this problem?
Yes. It's, depending on the problem. What's funny is I had to learn whether or not my gut was right. And you have to develop that. And that goes back to the mistakes that you make. It takes time to say, okay, I can trust my gut. I can do this. Why? Because I did it last time. I did it when I was in the basement. I've done harder things. But I also, I'm an individual where I don't think I know everything. I'm opinionated, but some of the greatest ideas or advice, I talked about that with a friend on the golf course. I talked about that when bringing my brother back. Look, there's a lot of people that have been through things or have scar tissue that I don't need to get. And I think your ability to leverage that in a positive way, for me, it's been one of the reasons why we've been successful, is because I don't want to fall in some of those pits that other people have fallen in. And choosing who those people are that you listen to is probably as important as listening in itself. Find people that have been there and ask, why is this person? And keep finding people, because as you grow, those people are going to change. And, hopefully you can find someone that's got a pretty long shelf life and has been through it, and you can leverage them the whole way so it's comfortable. And I think I've done a pretty good job with that.
Let's give Ryan another big round of applause.
Thanks, brother.